Thank God. To say that I'm relieved that my first post got through would be an understatement of massive proportions. Even though it seems like not many people saw it, the fact that anybody did is a blessing in itself. It gives me hope that all of us might make it out of this situation yet. First and foremost, to the people who did see it and commented, I can't thank you enough. Especially to the person who suggested a plan for what to do regarding the power. It was actually thanks to you that I was able to give the captain and others a suggestion of what to do today. Unfortunately, due to the fact that we were so excited to get off the point of no return before she sank out from under us, we didn't bring the life raft with us, only the supplies we thought we'd need. We were too caught up in the fact that we had a better alternative to remember to lug it up the ladder. I do have to confess one thing to you all, though. When I first woke up this morning and checked the comments you left, I thought people were either pulling my leg, thinking I was bullshitting you all, or that you had to be mistaken. After all, if the Queen Elizabeth caught fire and sank years, if not decades ago, how the hell could we be on board? Ghost ships, legitimate ones, they only exist in horror films, not in real life. There had to be a mistake made here. However, after some of the things that have happened today, I can't help but start to wonder if you're right. And if you are, we're in a whole lot bigger trouble than I thought we were. But I'm jumping the gun though. I should tell you what really went down today. When I first woke up, the first thing I realised was that the storm had passed. The rain no longer pounded on the roof of the ship and it no longer twisted about in the swells. For a moment, it was so calm that I forgot where we were. What had happened yesterday. Then, everything came crashing back to me, causing me to sit up straight in my sleeping bag. The first thing I saw was the captain, who sat in one of the lounge chairs. He must have woken up a while ago. His head turned in my direction as I pulled myself out of the bag and to my feet, and he gave a short nod. Winding my way around the sleeping forms of the others, I made my way over to him. How long have you been up, Cap? I whispered it as I picked up another chair and sat it beside him. He shrugged. Oh, a little now. I was planning on waking everyone up in 20 minutes or so anyways. I could still see that losing Kenny still weighed heavily on his shoulders. The man likely hadn't got much sleep due to it eating away at him. I decided to say something. You know, what happened wasn't your fault, Gabe. Kenny was above us. We couldn't have done anything to save him. It was just an accident. For a moment I saw his eyes harden, and his mouth opened as if to snap at me. And then he slumped into the chair, his body seeming to sag. I appreciate you saying that, Nathan. More than you know, he sighed. But a captain's job is to keep his crew safe, to get them home. I didn't do that for Kenny, and I'm going to have to live with that. I wanted to argue, but I saw that no amount of it would change his mind. Instead, I nodded and turned to look out across the massive room. We roused the others a few minutes later, and as they opened up the supplies we brought to bring out some food and water, the captain reminded me to check the laptop. Booting it up, I saw the battery was low, making a mental reminder to set the solar power charger in the sunlight outside to charge it back up. Then I checked the post I'd made. Hope and excitement surged through me as I saw the comments left below. You guys, people saw what I wrote. I called out, and in seconds I was surrounded as everyone crowded around me. A bottle of water and a granola bar were shoved into my hands as they read the comments you'd all left. There was silence for a few moments. Then Spencer spoke up. That can't be right. He said it. He looked up at us. These people can't be right. There's no way the ship they're talking about is the same one we're on board. Wyatt answered him. No way, Spence. They either think we're playing with them and just spewing bullshit, or they're thinking of another ship. We're not in some 2000s horror movie. I shot a look at the captain. Cap, you're the oldest of all of us, I began. Do you know if there was a ship called the Queen Elizabeth that did catch fire and sink? Oh, he stayed quiet for a moment, seemingly lost in the thought before answering. There was a ship called the Queen Elizabeth that was built in the 1930s that did catch fire and sink in the Hong Kong harbour in the early 70s. He shook his head. But no, there's no way this could be the same one. There are no such things as ghost ships that manifest out of nothing. He stood up, seeming to push away any remaining thoughts of the matter from his head. We need to be getting on to some more realistic, more pressing matters. We need to find a way to get the power going. Without it, we have no way to operate the radio, send out a call for help. I pointed out as a particular comment that gave an idea of what to do. He leaned down silently, reading it before nodding. That's our plan for today, he declared before splitting us into two teams. One team comprising of myself, Andrew, Spencer and Will. We would explore as much of the ship as we could, while the captain, Wyatt, and the only other remaining members of our crew, a tall, muscular Italian named Vinny, would try and find their way down to the bowels of the ship to restore power. With the plan made and a set of walkie-talkies given to the captain and me so we could maintain radio contact with each other, we exchanged the last good luck and stay safe, and we all left the lounge. Flicking on our flashlights, the four of us slowly walked back through the hallway we'd taken to get inside. A moment later we emerged into the bright light of day. The sun felt nice and warm on my face, and I couldn't help but let a small smile cross it. It disappeared though, as my eyes looked out beyond the railing. The endless ocean surrounded us, stretching far away beyond the horizon. No sign of land anywhere. A small shiver shot through me as the image of our ship slipping beneath the waves replayed in my mind, along with watching Kenny fall to his doom. I shook my head. Snap yourself out of it, Nate. Keep focused. I pulled the solar charger from my pocket and set it down next to the open hatch. I'd pick it up later when we came back this way. Andrew spoke up, pointing out to the row of lifeboats that hung from davits spread out away from us. You think those would still be safe to use? He asked. I shrugged my shoulders. I don't see why not. But I wouldn't want to try and use one of those to get back to shore. I pushed the hair out of my eyes and pushed my glasses up on my nose. All right, let's keep moving, guys. For the next few hours, the four of us explored both the inside and outside of the ship, occasionally stopping to radio our position back to the captain. The Queen Elizabeth was indeed a luxury ship in every sense of the word. The wood on the outside decks was well varnished and teaked, shining brilliantly in the sunlight. The same was true for the miles of wood that plastered the walls of the carpeted hallways and rooms that crisscrossed the inside like a maze. I was almost in awe of how beautiful it all was. However, there was one thing that surprised me, and I wasn't the only one to notice. As we walked through another lounge, Will said the words that incessantly reverberated in my head. Anyone else notice we haven't seen a single TV on board yet? Andrew shrugged his shoulders. Hey, who knows? Maybe they took all the TVs off the wall for renovations or something. Or maybe it's one of those ships that deliberately doesn't have any in order to keep the passengers from not taking part in activities. His words reassured me a little, but I still couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable. The entire time we'd been exploring the ship, an indescribable feeling had followed me like an annoying dog, and to make matters worse, the feeling of being watched I'd had last night hadn't gone away. Every so often I would shoot a look behind us as we walked, aiming my light back the way we'd come. I saw nothing, but for whatever reason it felt like something had been there, pulled back just out of sight every single time I'd looked. As we entered what, according to the sign above the door, was the first-class smoking room, the radio on my belt chirped. There was a layer of static above everything due to the massive amount of steel and wood in the way, but the words of the captain were unmistakable. "Nathan, we finally reached the engine room. We also found the power source." I heard a small trace of surprise in the man's voice as he continued. "You're not going to believe this, but the ship is powered by what appears to be yarrow boilers. I haven't seen these things on a ship since I was a young man in the Navy." Spencer's face scrunched up in confusion. "What the hell is a yarrow boiler?" he asked. I shrugged my shoulders and hit the transmit button. "Can you get the power going?" There was another wave of static before he answered. "It'll take a while, but yes, we'll be able to get the power back to the ship. Just give us about 20 minutes or so, half an hour at most. It's been a while since I've had to fire one of these behemoths up, and there are 12 of them down here." And with that, he clicked off. "Well, now what are we going to do in the meantime?" Will asked. Spencer began to answer him. "Well, I remember seeing on a map on the wall that there's a first-class gym on this deck. 4 of us could go and lift some weights until they get everything going. Or if you fancy a swim, there's a swimming pool as well. Or hell, we could even..." He kept speaking, but I'd stopped listening to him. The feeling of being watched had returned, this time with a vengeance that caused a cascade of shivers to shoot up my spine. For a moment, I resisted the urge to look around. Then, I cast my eyes towards a set of windows to the outside, where someone peered in at us. I only caught a glimpse of the figure for a moment before they realised they'd been spotted. They yanked their head back out of sight, but it was enough to see what looked like a small boy or young teenager. "Hey!" I shouted, rushing over to the window. It didn't open, but I was able to crane my neck enough to look around the corner. The deck was empty in all directions, but I knew I hadn't seen things. There had been someone there. "Hey guys, did any of you see that?" There was no answer from behind me. I could imagine them looking at me like I'd just grown 2 heads. Oh, they probably think I'm nuts. "Seriously, I'm not kidding. I saw someone out there." They still didn't respond. I felt a slight pang of irritation flow through me and turned back, beginning to speak. "Guys, don't be arseholes. I'm asking you The smoking room was empty. My voice died in my throat, and I felt a wave of confusion wash over me. What the hell? I looked around, my eyes wandering to the ornate bar that lined the back of the room. But there was no movement over there either. What the hell? Did they fucking leave? I breathed out incredulously. The irritation I'd felt a moment ago reared its head again, and I strode to the open doors to the hallway. "Hey, assholes! What the hell's the matter with you? We're not supposed to split up." My voice echoed away into the gloom, bouncing off the wooden walls and dying. But nobody answered. The thought entered my mind. Oh, this better not be a fucking prank. This is not the time nor the place for that shit. I knew that the 3 men loved to play practical jokes on themselves and the rest of the crew, but I would have thought they'd known better than to pull them with this predicament. I let out a deep sigh, and I began to walk down the hall, my footsteps muted by the carpeted floor. "If this is a joke, I'll fucking wring your necks," I muttered, reaching a T-junction, shining my light down it. It was empty. Empty and silent. I kept going straight, passing by a sign showing the direction of a gym and the movie theatre. I remembered hearing Spencer talk about it and quickened my pace. I expected the sound of voices to slowly begin filtering down to me, but as I approached the door to it, still, I heard nothing. And when I shone the light inside, reflecting off rowing machines, stationary bikes and other exercise equipment, I didn't recognise my exasperation had grown. "Know what? Screw this," I said through gritted teeth, snatching up the walkie-talkie from my belt and thumbing it. "Hey, Captain, you're not going to like this, but the others have quite literally abandoned me and ran off to God only knows where. I'm trying to find them, but they've completely fucked off. Any advice of what I should do? Over." A wall of static greeted me as I let go of the transmit button. Nobody answered. I hit the button again. "Captain, do you read me? I'm alone. The others have run off." More static. I began to fiddle with the dials, changing channels. Fucking interference. Stupid piece of shit. I hit the button again. "Hello? Does anybody read me? Over." The static suddenly stopped. The hallway went silent. It was already quiet. This was a silence I've never experienced before, one that seemed to be alive, if that makes any sense. Then a voice suddenly tumbled in from the walkie-talkie speaker. "Hello, Nathan." My eyes shot down to the radio in my hand, my breath catching in my throat. It felt like someone had just poured a bucket of ice water down my back. That wasn't the captain's voice. That wasn't any of my crew's voices. For a moment I debated saying nothing. Then I slowly pressed down on the transmit button. My throat had gone as dry as cotton. "Hello?" I said, my voice coming out gaspy and a little ragged. For a few seconds there was no reply. Then came that voice again. A man's voice, deep and low. "Welcome aboard to you all." My heart began to thump hard in my chest and my breathing quickened. What the actual fuck, man? I forced myself to hit the button again, forced my voice to come out more calmer than I felt. "Who the hell are you?" There was another stretch of silence, in which I began to furiously look over my shoulders, the feeling of paranoia growing by the second. Then my blood turned to ice as a new sound emanated from the radio speaker. The sound of the man beginning to laugh. Another laugh joined the first, this time a woman. I stared at the radio, as if it was possessed, as more and more people's laughter began to filter out of it, sounding as if an entire room full of people had just found what I'd said the most hilarious thing they'd ever heard. Fear. Fear began to fill every fibre of my being, a new kind of fear, different than the one I felt in the storm last night. Then it climaxed as a horrifying scream, one that sounded like a woman being brutally murdered, tore from the speaker. I practically flung the walkie-talkie out of my hand to the floor, clapping a hand over my mouth as I backed up against the wall. As soon as the scream finished, the radio went silent. Dead. For a few moments I stood there, hand still clapped over my mouth, staring at the radio like it was about to sprout legs and chase after me. I fought to get my racing heart and shuddering breath under control, the logical part of my mind trying to make sense of things. You're panicking, Nathan. You're panicking. And you're panicking so much that you're beginning to experience auditory hallucinations. When the mind breaks, it conjures up things that aren't there. What you need to do is get outside in the fresh air. The fresh air will do you good. I took a deep breath, feeling myself begin to calm down. The fear I'd felt began to melt away like ice in spring, and I shook my head. Yeah, you're supposed to be the calm and rational type, Rogers, I whispered to myself. I let out my own soft laugh and took a step towards my dropped radio, but I stopped as I felt my foot step on something that wasn't the carpet. I looked down at the floor. There, crushed under my left foot, was what appeared to be a folder of some sort. No, not a folder. I crouched down, aiming my light as I picked up the object. There was artwork on the cover. I could see a violin, a film reel, shuffleboard, and other items decorating it. Big, blocky black letters in the middle of the cover read, "Program for today." And in the bottom right-hand corner was the word Cunard in a cursive scrawl. I looked at the cover as I walked over and picked the radio up, clipping it back to my belt. Focusing my attention on it was helping me stay calm, and I decided to quickly flip it open and see what it said. There were only 2 pages inside. The top of the left page was adorned with the word Notices, while the right page was headlined by Program of Events. My eyes began to slide down them, silently reading it out until my mind caught up with my eyes. Wait, I didn't just see that, did I? I flashed the light back up to the top of the page, where the date was stamped. Thursday, June 21st, 1956. I blinked my eyes a couple of times, slightly praying that the date would change, that I was seeing things. But no, it remained the same. I began to feel my heart pound again. This makes no fucking sense. For a moment, my mind flashed back to the comment I'd seen this morning about the ship having sunk decades ago. I shook my head, trying to stay calm. Just get the hell outside, Nathan. Taking a breath, I turned to head back in the direction of the smoking room and froze. The program fell from my hand to the floor. My heart thundered in my chest and my breathing came in short, ragged gasps. There were figures standing in the hallway. Down by the T-junction, I couldn't tell how many, but there were enough that they blocked the way back. In the gloom, I just couldn't see any features, just the dark outlines of them. Remembering the flashlight in my hands, I began to raise it to aim it towards them. And that's when the light flickered out. I was plunged into gloom as I stared down at the light, smacking it and mentally pleading for it to come back to life. But it was no use. The light was dead. Realization suddenly filled me as my mind screamed at me that I'd taken my eyes away from the figures. When I snapped my head up, I almost screamed. They had drawn closer, packing the hallway from wall to wall. They made no noise, not at first. And then I heard the whispering begin. It started quietly, almost to the point I thought I was hearing things. But then it began to grow louder. I couldn't tell what was being said. The voices were so low it was impossible to distinguish words. Even so, I felt a new bolt of terror shoot through me. My fear compounded as I saw the figures take a step towards me. I began to shake as I slowly began to back away. Then, they came for me. The figures were suddenly a blur of motion, moving far faster than any human could. They streamed towards me, the whispering intensifying to a fever pitch. Caught off guard, I stumbled backwards, tripping over my own feet and falling to the floor. My right elbow slammed into wood panelling. I felt a bolt of pain shoot up my arm. The figures swarmed over me, the whispering morphing into laughter. Laughter and screaming. A moment later, more screaming began. My screams. I raised my arms over my head, covering my face and curling into a ball. Tears began rolling down my face, and I felt at any moment I'd be torn apart. Nathan? The shout cut through the silence. I stopped screaming, but kept my arms over my head protectively. Then I felt a hand began to roughly shake me. The terror returned and I lashed out, "Get the fuck off me!" I screamed it. The voice came again, a familiar voice. "Hey, easy bro, easy." The realization made me lower my arms and open my eyes. 3 faces, etched with panic and fear. They all looked down at me. For a second I fought to find my voice. Andrew? Will? Spence? Relief crossed the faces of my crewmate. "Oh, he's back," Andrew said quietly, wiping visible sweat from his brow. I uncurled myself and sat up, looking around. I was lying on the floor of the smoking room, close to the window, where I'd seen the figure outside. Sunlight still streamed in, landing on where I'd collapsed to the floor. I looked up at the others. What the hell happened? I managed to ask. Spencer shook his head, still looking rattled. But Andrew answered me. "Dude, I have no fucking idea. One minute we were talking about going to check out other areas of a ship. The next you suddenly yelled and ran to the window, and you started pulling a statue routine. You didn't respond to anything we said. You just stared out at the ocean. You weren't moving, not even blinking. Not until you fell to the floor and began screaming." He let out his own shaky breath. "You scared the ever-loving shit out of us." I blinked rapidly, my mind trying to make sense of his words. Had I really hallucinated everything? Had it all just been in my head? I stumbled to my feet, aided by Will and Spencer. Andrew just kept looking at me, a concerned look on his face. "I'm okay," I said, my voice sounding far calmer and more sure than I felt. "You sure?" Will asked. I nodded. I must have gotten less sleep than I thought. The stress, the sleep, it's made me, I don't know, fall asleep standing up or something. I could see the other 2 relax, taking my words at face value, but Andrew continued to look at me for a moment, unconvinced. Finally, he nodded too. The sound of static stabbed through the air, causing me to almost jump out of my skin. Then the sound of the captain's voice rang out from the radio on the belt. "We're in business, boys," I heard him declare it happily. A moment later I felt the floor beneath my feet shudder slightly, for must have been the boilers roaring to life, and then the lights came on, all through the ship. The smoking room became ablaze with yellow light of what had to be incandescent bulbs, banishing away the gloom that lurked in the corners like monsters in the closet. I began to say something to the others when a new sound began. Music. Music began spilling out from what had to be hidden speakers in the walls or the ceiling. It echoed all throughout the deck. I could hear the instruments along with the woman's crooning voice reverberating far down the hallway, and likely all throughout the ship as well. Spencer looked up at the walls. Man, that's one hell of an old song, he commented. Andrew nodded, still looking hard at me. Will suddenly snapped his fingers. I know this song, he exclaimed. My grandmother used to play it all the time when I was a little kid. He began snapping his fingers again, thinking hard. It's by a singer from the 40s and 50s called, I think it's Joe Stafford. Now, Andrew did take his eyes off me, looking over at him. What's the song's name, he asked, mildly interested. Will thought for another moment and answered, You Belong to Me. As if on cue, the singing voice sang out the 4 words. I couldn't help but shiver slightly at them, still feeling as if I'd jumped straight from Kansas to Oz, then been booted back to reality. I cleared my throat. Hey guys, would you mind not telling the captain about what happened with me? They looked at me for a moment, thinking, yeah. Sure, Nate, Andrew said. As long as you don't ever do that again. Feeling relieved, I nodded. Spencer spoke up. Come on, we should try and meet back with the captain, figure out what to do next. And with that, he walked out of the room, Will following close after him. Andrew shot me one more look. Sure you're all right, he asked. I nodded. Yeah, I'm fine. I lied. I raised my right arm to rub the back of my neck as soon as he began to leave the room. But I stopped as a throbbing pain suddenly shot up my arm. I let out a small gasp of pain, bringing my left hand over to feel the back. As soon as my fingers touched my right elbow, another sear of pain rippled out. I turned and looked at where I'd fallen. There was nothing there for me to slam my elbow into, and the carpet had been thick and plush. Too plush to have hurt myself. The mental image of falling back into the wall suddenly burst forth in my mind, falling as those figures rushed towards me, whispering, laughing, and screaming. My eyes slowly rose to look down the now brightly lit hallway. Even from here I could see the sign showing the location of the gym. I shuddered. It was just a hallucination, wasn't it? I swallowed hard, forcing the thought from my head, and hurried to catch up to the others. We met the captain and the others back in the lounge where we'd spent the night. They found a way to turn the music off, and for that at least I was thankful. All we'd heard as we walked through the ship had been songs that sounded like they were from 70 years ago or older. All they did was remind me of the program I'd clutched in my hand, seeing the date on it. We could tell they must have been breaking their backs to get the boilers going. Sweat and black stains covered their faces and clothes. The captain glanced down at his watch. We have only about an hour or so of daylight left. Let's try and make our way to the radio room to see if we can send out a distress call. After that, we'll figure out where to go from there. We all nodded, then hurried after the man as he led the way. The radio room wasn't hard to find at all. Once we'd entered the upper levels of the ship, ones I could tell were meant for crew only, the signs led us right to it. My hopes at being able to get off rose with each step we took, and then they were dashed as we reached a closed door to it. The captain reached out and attempted to turn the handle, but it refused to turn. A few of us gathered up next to him and attempted to force it open, but it wouldn't budge a single inch. Damn, it's locked, the captain growled out as he finally gave up. I felt my heart sink. I could see the same expression in everyone's face, but then the captain continued, Okay, that means there's got to be a set of keys somewhere. Keys that can get us in there. He rapped on the metal door with his knuckles. So our next job is to find them. They'll likely be in the crew's sleeping quarters, maybe even the captain's cabin. He looked at his watch again. But that'll be a job for tomorrow. We should head back to the lounge, get some food and water into our systems, and get some sleep. We've done a good job today in finding our way through the ship now. Now that she's got power, it's going to be a lot easier. I felt equal parts dismay and anxiety as I followed the others back to the lounge. And as much as I tried to ignore it, I still felt watched. The lights didn't help one bit. I kept looking back over my shoulder, afraid I would see the boy I'd seen in the smoking room window again. Or worse, the shadowy figures. Thankfully, though, I never did. We made it uneventfully back to the lounge where we ate our dinner, packages of MREs that had been part of our emergency supplies, and then began to settle down for the night. I used the solar charger I'd left outside all day to charge the laptop. As I booted it up, Will came over to me. You truly all right, man? He quietly asked me. I nodded at him, giving him a false smile. He sighed. As much of a fucked up situation as we're in, the only good part was hearing that song again. I haven't heard that since my grandmother passed away. I looked up at him. You like that kind of music? I asked. He nodded. Honestly, I like everything about that time period. The 1950s, I mean. I like the music, the movies, the celebrities, the cars. Between you and me, bro, I like it a hell of a lot more than the 21st century. If they invented time travel in my lifetime, I'd go back there in a heartbeat and never come back. He just let out a laugh and patted me on the shoulder and walked back to his sleeping bag. I watched him go, then looked over at the captain. He gazed around at everyone, then looked at me. I startled slightly. I saw something in his eyes that I wasn't used to seeing. Worry. Worry and fear. Did he see something down in the engine room? Just as quickly it was washed away and he nodded at me. I returned the gesture and he pointed at the laptop in my lap. It was an unspoken gesture. Are you going to try sending a message out again? I nodded and he stood up, stretching his arms over his head and yawning before shaking his head slightly and heading down for his own sleeping bag. And now, here I am, the only one left awake again. The captain turned out most of the lights in the lounge, something I really did not like. So I moved over to a table that remained upright, one that had a lamp built into the middle of it, turned it on. I now sit here, typing this all out. But I can't help but look up, my eyes darting around the dark. I'm terrified. Every time I take my eyes off the screen, I think I'm going to see those figures again, standing in the dark and staring at me. I wish so much that we could just jump into one of the lifeboats on the side of a ship, lower it into the sea and roll away from this godforsaken place as fast as we can. But with only about a week and a half's worth of food and supplies, no idea where we are, we could end up rowing directly into the middle of the Atlantic. If we're not here already. Like I said at the start, when I first started this day, I felt for sure that you all had to be wrong. That just because this ship was named the Queen Elizabeth didn't mean it was the same one that caught fire and sank long ago. But what I saw in the hallway, both that program from 1956 and those things that I truly don't know whether I hallucinated or not, I'm starting to believe that you might be right. As much as my logical mind tells me it's impossible, I think that we might have jumped out of the frying pan of our sinking ship and into the fire. And honestly, part of me is beyond terrified. I'm not going to get any sleep tonight. I think in the morning I'll see about getting myself some kind of weapon. Chair leg, knife, something. Anything. It may not do anything against ghosts, but it might make me feel better at least. Please, if you're still there, if you're reading this, please let me know what we should do tomorrow. Should we try and find the keys to the radio room like the captain suggested? Or should we do something else? Is there anything that I might be missing here? Does anyone know anything more about the Queen Elizabeth? Anything that might give us a clue as to why this is happening? Or just direct us to any of the important places? Anything useful? Anything you can think of that might help us? God knows. Right now, we need all the help we can get.